you? Each one has a mic. So, Boker Tov, Shalom. Yair Lapid has the very easy job of being the alternate prime minister and minister of foreign affairs in this government and is the founder and chairperson of Yesh Atid. Previously, Mr. Lapid served as Minister of Finance and as member of the Political Security Cabinet during the 19th Knesset. In 2013, Lapid was included in Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world and Foreign Policy's 100 leading global thinkers. And before his 2012 entry into politics, Mr. Lapid was a leading television personality, and I'm sure we're going to see it momentarily, news anchor and columnist. You've authored 12 books and are a two-time recipient of the Platinum Book Award from the Israeli Union of Publishers. So we have another writer here. Yaakov Katz is the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post and author of Shadow Strike, Inside Israel's Secret Mission to Eliminate Syrian Nuclear Power. You're also the co-author of Weapon Wizards, How Israel Became a High-Tech Military Superpower, and Israel versus Iran, The Shadow War. Yaakov served for close to a decade as the paper's military reporter and defense analyst, and was a lecturer at Harvard, where he taught an advanced course in journalism. You served as an Israeli correspondent for Jane's Defense Weekly. And before taking your role as editor-in-chief, you've served for 2 years as a senior policy advisor to Naftali Bennett during his tenure as Israel's Minister of Economy and Minister of Diaspora Affairs. So I leave it to you both to wow the audience.
Thank you. Minister Lapid, good morning. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. So we'll dive right into some of the tough issues. I know one issue that the conference...
I'm very happy to be here and meet with you.
There you go.
Before diving into anything.
So the conference has been, I know, talking over the last couple of days about matters of religion and state. Your government, the government that you're the founder of to an extent and a key crucial partner, has been pushing forward some reforms with some success. We saw the kashrut reform, which is nice. There's a lot of talk now about the conversion reform, which is moving through the legislative process. But one reform that seems to be stuck is the Kotel Compromise, so-called. Prime Minister Bennett, in an interview with my paper just a few weeks ago, said that it's not going to happen. Right? Can't happen. I got opposition from my party. There's opposition from other parties, seemingly from New Hope. I know that you are a big proponent of the Kotel Compromise and have been for a long time. Is there still hope that this will happen?
Yes, but it will take time. I have said right after the interview Prime Minister Bennett gave you, I was asked about this, and I said, well, we have pushed forward so many things that looked impossible in this past year. This is what we're going to do with the Kotel framework or with the Kotel compromise. Yes, the structure of this government doesn't allow us to move as forward as I might have wanted, not might have, that I want to. This doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It means it's going to take more time. There's a lot of political maneuvering, I guess, but I never give hope on anything, especially not something as important as the Kotel framework. This has to do with the relations we have with the diaspora, with the American Jewry, with the Reform conservative communities that are extremely important to me. So sometimes when you have political obstacles, you're waiting for the right moment, and you have to keep on pushing in order for this right moment to arrive eventually.
So is the right moment August 2023 when you alternate into the Prime Minister's office? Is that?
Well, I don't know. It's still going to be the same government.
Right.
With the same structure.
In other words, the same veto structure,
with
basically.
the same veto structure. But as it happens, I mean, when you're living in a political arena, people have needs and wants, and there are certain moments in which certain desires appear, and this is where you jump in. And you say, okay, and here's what I want. And this is one of those things that I really want, and my party does, and some of the other partners do. So we're gonna just relentlessly push forward without but not without the necessary caution, because we need this government to succeed and to long live.
So on that note of the government succeeding, it's now about 8 months, more or less, in office. And something that you just said earlier of, this isn't a government that you're able to get everything that you want done. And we know, for example, I mean, just throwing out one example, you'd like small cabinets, small numbers of ministers. This is a pretty big government with a lot of ministers, some of them without exact portfolios and things like that. There's religion state issues, there's diplomatic issues. Are you still happy when you look overall, you're now 8 months in? Are you still able to get what you want done? Is it still worth it?
Yeah, very
Even
much
at the price of the ideological sacrifice that you have to make?
Well, I'm a centrist. Centrists understand that the word is not a welcoming committee. It is keep on, try, and see what's doable, and then go and do it under the circumstances. Circumstances are the important thing. And so, yes, I would love it to have only 18 ministers. Yes, but I refuse. I mean, at the beginning, I used to tell people, I'm so sorry about the fact that we don't have this. I always believed in this, and I still do. But I refuse to apologize for the fact that we have formed a government that has saved the country from the anti-democratic forces that was trying to change the basic structure of what Israel is. Israel needs to be a democratic Jewish state, and the Democratic Party is as important as the Jewish part. And therefore, if we weren't gathering together and building this exact coalition, I'm telling you, Israel won't be the democracy we think it needs to be as we speak. So I refuse to apologize.
But with that said, right, we've seen reports in recent weeks of the use of different technologies by the police, NSO. There's now calls for a commission of inquiry. What do you know of where things stand on that front? You have the Netanyahu camp, which is saying that this is a violation of democratic rule of law, right? Invasion of privacy, eavesdropping,
he's
hacking.
the expert. Yeah.
Okay, but where does...
Sorry, couldn't help it.
Where does it stand in terms of another commission of inquiry from the government's perspective?
Well, we didn't have reports. We have a report. One journalist in one newspaper, and we have right now nothing to back it up. I mean, we have formed an inquiry in the Ministry of Justice in order to make sure people won't be too suspicious or there will be too many conspiracy theories. We have added to this inquiry also Mossad and Shabak people that has nothing to do with the political arena. They came back to us and they said, we found nearly nothing of the things that were reported. So, I mean, at the beginning, when this was first published, I said, let's go immediately to some sort of a national inquiry committee, like an Israeli COI. But right now, we have no evidence to support this.
Right,
now,
so that call of yours earlier, you're now walking back a little.
Well, what we said at the beginning is that if this is true, we're going to go and we're going to investigate this to the full extent of the law, whatever allows us to deep into the subject. Right now, we have sent the best people in the country, the experts, and they came back and they said, well, we see nearly nothing of the things that were published.
Mm-hmm.
They're still looking at some stuff, but basically, right now we are looking at this, and this is a bit strange. I mean, and the newspaper who published the original story refuses, and the journalist who published the original story refuses to publish, to tell us what the source is or what kind of evidence he has to the publications. So I want to be a bit more careful about this.
Okay, moving to some diplomatic issues for a moment. Yesterday, the Prime Minister spoke here and spoke about how we're getting a weaker, shorter deal with Iran. The talks in Vienna seem to be moving fast forward towards a new deal, either return to JCPOA or something that's going to be worse. When your government came into office, it basically pitched to the Israeli people that we'll know how to work with the Biden administration. We're not going to go to Congress like Prime Minister Netanyahu did back in 2015. We're going to work together with them, but we're getting a bad deal. So is this possibly a failure on behalf of the Israeli government?
No, it is, well, first of all, you have to remember the kind of provocating conflict that former Prime Minister Netanyahu had with the administration. And by the way, at the time, Vice President Biden was part of this administration. Didn't use, had no end to it. I mean, it just spoiled the relations Israel had with the administration, with nothing to see to it. I mean, because then they went and they did the JCPOA, and they ignored the fact that Israel was so much against it, and then they didn't listen to so many other things, because Congress was against us, because the administration was angry.
So the whole relationship was sour.
And the whole relationship was sour, and we almost lost. I don't know, I mean, we almost lost the bipartisan statue of Israel in Washington, which we cannot afford. I mean, if there's one asset Israel's security has, it's this special relationship, which are bipartisan. And this is not to be played with, and it was played with. So the first thing we did was restoring, and I think we did a good job restoring the bipartisan statue of Israel in Washington. And we're working very good with this administration on many issues. The Abraham Accords, economy, Syria, Middle Eastern, a lot of security issues. Some of them can be discussed here, some of them cannot. On the JCPOA, we disagree. But we disagree in a manner that helps us work with them, A, on the results of the disagreement, and B, on other issues. We think, yes, the return for the JCPOA is a return to a weaker agreement just because of the time.
The time has passed, and the sunset clause that still exists.
What has happened is, just for everybody to understand, I know it's a knowledgeable crowd, but still. The JCPOA was signed in 2015 for 10 years before the lifting of the first sanctions. They didn't move this clause, and therefore it's going to expire. So many limits and limitations are going to expire on 2025. This is 2.5 years from now, or less than 3 years from now. So it's a weaker deal, even if it's the same deal. And we were unhappy with the deal to begin with. I was at the opposition at the time, and we also said we are unhappy with the deal. And of course, we are more unhappy with the deal that has lost 4 years and is going into 2.5 years from now for lifting of sanctions. But there is a dialogue with the American administration about several issues that are surrounding this agreement. A is the fact that the Iranians are now asking for a cancellation of the declaration of the Revolutionary Guard as a terror organization. Now, the Revolutionary Guard is the roof organization, so to speak, of Hezbollah, of Islamic Jihad, of the Houthis in Yemen, and it's a terror organization per se, by itself. So we are talking to them about this, and I think everybody in his right mind should talk to the administration about this and tell them this is just wrong, don't do that. And we are also talking to them about what does longer and stronger mean. When you said, if we're going to this agreement, we're going to improve it in other ways, meaning we're going to make sure Iran does not become a threshold nuclear country in other ways, we are now talking to them what these other ways are and how are we going to deal with this together as the friends we are. And besides, we have maintained publicly our ability to say, you know what, you've signed the agreement. We didn't sign the agreement. It doesn't oblige us. And we're going to do whatever we think is necessary in order to make sure Iran does not become a threshold nuclear country.
But with that said, and they're going towards a deal with the sunset clause still in effect in less than 3 years, and we're getting that the IRGC is still going to be considered a terrorist organization. That's the benefit Israel gets out of this whole thing.
No, I gave you an example. It's an example that the
So is there something? How are you? Because I mean, you're a communicator, and one of the things I think one of the challenges that you're going to have is how do you communicate this to the Israeli people of not being a failure and being something of we walked away with some sort of success. And as things stand now, it doesn't seem that we've been able to impact the deal in a big way.
You know what? I'm not a communicator anymore. I am.
A politician still needs to be a communicator.
No, we are, as a government, we are in charge of Israel's security. We are in charge of Israel's relations with the United States. And I'm not going to sacrifice those hugely important assets in order to have a great line in the media. So yes, the easy thing to do is go on television and yell and shout against the administration. But this is irresponsible, and I am a responsible person, and we are a responsible government, and therefore we're not going to have easy profits on the account of the Israeli public and Israel's security.
The impact that this will have, though, once there is a deal on Israel-U.S. relations. So because you are working together with the administration, you think that this is something, and even though there is this disagreement, and you're saying we still, doesn't obligate us, we could still do what we need to do, and maybe that means sabotage, maybe that means more assassinations that reportedly Israel's been involved in, maybe cyber attacks, I don't know, whatever that could mean. Will that, if Israel does take action, won't that undermine the relationship if America has now reached a new deal with Iran?
Well, there is a point in which we are going to tell the Americans. I mean, we are, as I said, great allies. We are not subordinated. We have the freedom to act on Israel's security the way we understand, and this is what we're going to do. And it might have some consequences, and it might have some price tag attached to it. I think we are willing to deal with this. And this is maybe why it is so important to keep the dialogue the way we are keeping it now.
You mentioned the Abraham Accords as one of the issues that you are talking with the administration about, and we know that you have developed cultivated a very good relationship with Secretary of State Blinken and other top officials in the administration you speak to regularly. It seemed that in the beginning, when the Biden folks took office, that they were a bit hesitant to embrace the Abraham Accords. Now they do, and they spoke very positively, for example, of your trips to Morocco and the UAE, the Prime Minister's trip last week to Bahrain. But it doesn't seem that they're working in a very active way or making a big effort towards trying to bring more countries to the table to reach deals with Israel. The Saudis, there was talk of them in the past, Oman, Indonesia. I'm curious where things stand and if that perception that I just portrayed is wrong.
It is wrong.
Okay. Not the first time I'm wrong, but...
You're married, right?
No, of course, yes.
Okay. You're right. The administration wasn't hesitant. They were just, they weren't sure how to approach this. But now they're working with us hand to hand. I mean, we're doing great things. I'll give you an example of how friendly the thing is. We are sitting in the beautiful house of the UAE ambassador in Washington, Yusuf, with Abdullah bin Zayed, the foreign minister of the UAE, and Tony Blinken and myself. And we are discussing how to work on infrastructures. And somebody says, you know what? I think India knows how to do this. So we're saying, you know what? Let's make a call to Jaishankar, to the foreign minister of India, to see what he thinks about it. This is Thursday night in Washington. 5 days later, Monday, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, here in Jerusalem. I'm sitting with Jaishankar here in the Foreign Ministry. We're having a Zoom meeting where Sheikh Abdullah is in London and Tony Blinken is in Washington, forming a group of 4 that is going to work on infrastructure and economy projects in the region. This happens only if you have a great dialogue. And this is, by the way, I mean, I used to work at the private sector. On governmental sector, the speed is unbelievable. Nobody is doing stuff in 5 days in 4 countries. So the administration is really into it because they understand the immediate gain, the kind of involvement you get through the Abraham Accords. We knew when we came into office that it's going to be very hard. It's going to take some time before we can add other countries to the Abraham Accords. But right now, the most important thing to do, and also the most important tool in order to have more countries in the Abraham Accords, is to make the Abraham Accords into a success story.
Right.
And this is why it is important it was important to us to have an American involvement in Morocco in a positive way, and we have that. And it was important to us to have, I know when I went to Bahrain, I went with Abdul Latif, with the foreign minister of Bahrain. We went to the American naval base over there, and we went on one of the ships with Admiral Cooper, the commander of
the Fifth Fleet.
So we're doing these kind of things for the region to understand the benefits of the Abraham Accords. Right now, this is what we're focusing on. And yes, we are talking in several levels of secrecy or
I think everyone here, though, will keep the secret if you tell us which country might come next.
Of course.
Right. Russia-Ukraine, big story right now. First of all, I'm just curious, as the foreign minister of Israel, do you think Putin's going to invade?
I just spent the entire the drive coming here from Tel Aviv discussing this in the foreign ministry. We had a big meeting. I think it is still avoidable. I think there's still things that, if you look just on the last diplomatic effort made by President Macron, that might translate itself into a meeting of Lavrov and Blinken and Le Drian on probably Thursday, because nobody says no when he's invited to Paris. That's one rule of life. And this might translate itself, hopefully, to a meeting between President Biden and Putin next week. So I think there's still enough room for diplomatic effort in order to try and make this invasion that looks inevitable to some people not inevitable.
I don't envy you and the other decision makers in government right now, because on the one hand, you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You have the Biden administration, which is going to look at you as one of their closest allies, if not the closest ally in the region, and say, listen, we're sanctioning now Vladimir Putin and other top Kremlin officials and allies, or whatever it might be, and we're expecting you to abide by that. On the other hand, as we have seen just in recent days, there was an alleged Israeli airstrike against Syria on Wednesday night. There was the infiltration of a drone on Friday, another drone a week before. We as a country, need to be able to retain operational freedom in Syria, and as everyone knows, Russia controls Syria today, and we have to work with Russia. So what do you do if this happens? How do you manage that?
Well, the answer is in the question. You manage that. And you manage that in a careful, smart way. I've been telling the world, as I was telling the Americans, we are, even if we understand, listen, if you don't work according to your own values, and my values are liberal democratic values, then you're not a country, you're a factory. And we are a country. So we're gonna eventually do the right thing the way, according to our set of beliefs and values. But on the way there, we have also a lot of reasoning that we need to make sure is in there, in the decision process. So, and I've been telling the Americans, as I was telling the Europeans, we are in some sort of a way in a bit of a Baltic kind of situation, meaning we have a border with Russia. What we have on our northern border, with our border with Syria, is a Russian border, because Russia is the important force inside Syria. So we have to take this into account. And there's another thing that you didn't mention, but preoccupies me even more than that. which is the fact that there are two enormous Jewish communities in Russia and in the Ukraine. I mean, in Russia, it's the second largest Jewish community in the world. In Ukraine, it's a huge community as well. So I've been telling everybody, you have to understand, I have to be more careful about this issue than any other foreign minister in the world, because we take this very seriously. I truly believe in the principle. I think Ariel Sharon was the last one who said, or was talking about the fact that Israeli government is not only the government of Israel, it is also the leading force of the Jewish people.
So if you've conveyed that to the Americans, do you think that there will be less pressure on you to abide by whatever sanction regime they might put in place against the Russians?
I think there is an understanding of this. By the way, we are communicating this to the Russians as well. I think, but you've asked about the American side. Here is where the special relationship comes to work.
Mm-hmm.
They understand this because they understand us, because we have a mutual vocabulary. We have a language we share. So they understand this even from a very deep historical perspective. And therefore, yes, we can discuss this with them, and they understand.
So before we wrap up, I listened yesterday to Defense Minister Benny Gantz's speech at the Munich Security Conference, and I was surprised to learn that I'm no longer a citizen of the State of Israel, but I'm a citizen of the entity of Israel. Benny Gantz spoke about a two-entity solution with regards to the Palestinian conflict. And I was just curious if that's a new policy of the Israeli government, that we're now pushing no longer a state solution, a two-state solution, but a two-entity solution?
I need to ask Benny. I didn't hear the speech yet. I will. So I don't want to respond to something I didn't hear, went through thoroughly. Benny is a serious person and usually thinks very seriously about what he's going to say before he says it. I am a believer of the two-state solution. I think this is the only way we can solve this. I think it's not going to be the end of conflict. I'm not naive, but I think there are 5 million Palestinians. They're not going to disappear. Of course, we are not going to disappear. We need to separate from them. It's not going to be a happy marriage. It's going to be a divorce, but we need to divorce from them. And they need to take responsibility on their life, by the way, we did before Israel was established. Before Israel was established, we had already healthcare. We had Social Security. So they need to go into this process of nation building if they want to be taken seriously as a future state. Having said that, I believe the two-state solution is the right solution, as long as it's cautious enough, takes into account the security measures Israel needs. And besides, they have to understand the city we're sitting in right now is ours. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel.
Alternate Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
So now, Mr. Lapid, we have a gift we'd like to present to you. And you mentioned Jerusalem just now, Yerushalayim. So it reads, "For the sake of Zion, I will not be silent, and for the sake of Jerusalem, I will not rest."
Thank you so much. I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
This is beautiful.
Yes,
It's
it
going to
is.
be in my office. And
That's what we hope.
it communicates to the way we finish the interview. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. Please.
No, that's fine.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
תודה רבה. תודה רבה.